Cougar fans, use this radio station tomorrow morning for important news updates. Listen to Utah's most important radio station tomorrow morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
It's Cougar Nation, and we want to hear from you. Cougar Nation, it's sponsored by Central Bank. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte. Every week we do this on Monday nights, 6 to 7 during the football and men's basketball season. If you miss any part of the show, subscribe to the podcast on the KSL Sports app or wherever you get your podcasts. 801-575-8255. We're taking phone calls for the next 10 minutes. So if you want to get your scorching hot Max Hall-inspired take on this Utah loss to BYU, BYU's win over the Utes, 22-21, get that phone call in now. Let's get out here to the phone line now and welcome on in Shep from West Jordan. What's on your mind, Shep?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. I was at the game with my kids. Pretty crazy environment. I haven't been able to go back and watch the game. I think as the season progresses, we're going to have to get better in these really hard situations and be more consistent. And then the one play I'd like to hear from you is on the 2-point conversion. It seemed like from my vantage point that Retzloff just threw it really, really fast. And so I'm curious if either of you know what he saw. Did he see? I think it was to Keanu Hill, if I remember right. Was he trying to throw it over the top to him to get it? But in my opinion, that's a must play. If we tie it at that point, we haven't allowed him to score in the second half. That changes the whole dynamic of that game. And so we need those 2 points to tie that game and really take control of the game. So I'd love to know if you know what Retzloff was thinking on that decision to make that throw.
Thanks, Shep. It looked like it was just a predetermined throw before the snap, and then he just simply underthrew it. That's kind of the vantage point that it looked like, where it was predetermined where he was going to go, regardless of the defender. What'd you think, Matt?
It was the same play they ran against SMU for a 2-point conversion, and that one was successful. It was just poorly executed. I thought, I went a little hard on A-Rod in the last segment on his fourth down play calling. I liked that play call. I liked that matchup. Keanu Hill had a big matchup. You just got to execute. Jake was off platform. He was not set, and he threw the ball short. So that was just, I think it was the right decision. I think there was an opportunity there to be made, Mitch. It's just not good execution from Jake.
The texts are rolling in. 51-28. Ute fans should be mad at Zamaya Vaughn for committing the hold. Okay. Texter 2318. That was a crazy game. Very happy the Cougars won. I'm feeling very optimistic that they go undefeated. Go Cougs. How do you feel about that, Matt? Do you feel more optimistic that they're going to run the table?
I do feel more optimistic. This was a real challenge, and I did not give this challenge enough respect, quite honestly. I thought Utah would not get up for this like they have in previous years due to all the things we've talked about previously, and that certainly was not the case. They coached a great game. Say what you want about Kyle Whittingham. You got to give him his coaching respect. He clearly had BYU's number in that first half, though. Credit Jay Hill and BYU's coaching staff as well for making some adjustments at the half that got BYU right back in business with a chance to win that football game. But when you win a game like this, knowing the stakes, knowing the history, knowing how long it's been, and I also think, too, it's important to note, Mitch, BYU did not anywhere come close to playing their best football. That first half was not great BYU football. Defensively in the second quarter, they were a leaky sieve. The Utes offense looked like the Rams during the Kurt Warner era for one quarter. It was like the greatest show on turf, marching up and down the field. Like this was by no means BYU football's best game. Special teams, it was pretty dang great. This special teams A+ in all categories. But offensively and defensively, there were long stretches where they did not play good football, and yet they won the game. Now they get 2 of the next 3 at home. I really like BYU's chances to run the table. I think you gain a lot of confidence. It's always good to win a game, Mitch, when there's a lot to clean up and a lot to work on, and that's exactly where BYU is.
You mentioned special teams. They accounted for 16 of BYU's 22 points. Part of that, those points were from Keelan Marion. His second kickoff touchdown return of the season, only becomes the 4th player in BYU football history to have multiple kickoff returns for touchdowns. this was Keelan on the belief of this team growing.
It grows every week, every day. The work we put in together, the means and the bonding time we spend with each other, it's a lot of belief. A lot of belief grows with that.
Marion's becoming a big playmaker on that kick return game, and that's been a great development to see for this team. More texts, again, 57500, 6880. I think Utah demonstrated severe unsportsmanlike conduct simply because things didn't go their way. They always think that they are high and mighty, but they're not. They need to get over themselves and focus on improving their game. Let's see here. Texter 7283 regarding the defensive holding penalty. What wasn't called was illegal hands to the face on Utah as well on the same play. Ropati came up to the block on the line to got thrashed. The Utes' left hand was a pushback, but the right hand was nearly a full punch to his face. It was missed by the refs, but it's on the video and very clear, so Utah got away with that one.
All right, we got to go rapid fire to the phone line. Jeanette from Orem, you want to talk about a potential disastrous turnover?
I sure do.
What's your question?
I wondered about that snap near the end of the game that was very low, that we almost had a fumble and lost the ball.
That was Bruce Mitchell, the backup center, and there were just moments, Jeanette, in that game where I think Bruce was shaken up by the moment, by the atmosphere. We had not seen any snaps like that prior to the Utah game, Mitch, and then that would have lost the game because Utah would have had the football deep in BYU's territory. They at least get 3 points there. That was a very fortunate moment. When you talk about balls going your way and getting lucky on the way to having a special season, moments like that are what are remembered because that could have easily went to Utah.
No question. That was a fortunate. And BYU had a few of those bounces go their way in this game. Jake had that fumble in the red zone, just bounced right back to him. So sometimes the bounces do go BYU's way. Marshall from Murray. Hey, Mike, where I live in Murray. Hey, what's on your mind, Marshall?
Yes, one factor I think affected the outcome of the game that hasn't been mentioned too much, the injury to Brant Keithy. If he would have been playing the second half for Utah, he had a very successful first half, and they would have had more offensive weapons to potentially upgrade their offense that second half.
It's a good point. That was a tough loss for Utah, and I hate that for him. We spoke with him at Big 12 Media Days, and a nice guy, and he means a lot to this Utah football program. That was a tough blow for someone who's fought serious injuries, Mitch. I hated to see that. I didn't appreciate all the speculation that Jacob Robertson had anything to do with that. Maybe chalked it up to rivalry emotions. That was just, I thought, an unfortunate play for Brant Keithy.
Definitely was, and that was early in the third quarter, and then Utah had to punt. I think it was on a 3rd and 9, and Keithy goes down. It was tough to see for someone that's talented like himself, and I think that did have potentially an impact because he was having a lot of success with Brandon Rose in that second quarter. Chris from Provo, what's on your mind, Chris?
Hi. You talked earlier about giving Jay Hill props for changing things up at halftime. I wanted to know what you actually saw that was different from the defense after the second half.
That's a great question, Chris. I thought one thing in particular, I thought there were more pressures, just a different variety of pressures in that second half. And I think the other thing that helps, too, in that situation, Mitch, for Jay Hill, is you get to the locker room, you re-emphasize the game plan. There was a lot of times in that first half where Brandon Rose simply made plays because BYU's defense didn't execute. So partly a change in philosophy in terms of aggression, but then also just a re-emphasis on doing your 111th, executing the scheme, and he got his guys to do that in the second half.
Well, they got out on 3rd down, too, and the interior of BYU's defensive line was causing a lot of pressure and being assignment sound, too. John Nelson, I thought Blake Mangelson had underrated performances in that game. I mean, Utah's drives in the second half, there was only one drive that featured more than 4 plays. I mean, Utah was not on the field much in the second half because BYU was getting off the field quickly. And so there was a lot of 3-and-outs for Utah in that final drive of the game, so that was huge for BYU. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's edition of Cougar Nation. Huge win for BYU, 22-21. The Cougs take down the Utes. They'll take on Kansas this Saturday, 8:15 kick. We won't have Cougar Sports Saturday due to BYU Idaho on basketball coverage at 1 p.m. this Saturday, but we'll have extended pregame at 6 o'clock here on KSL News Radio. Talk to you then.